Hello guys, and welcome to my fourth video with tips and tricks to improve your EU4 gameplay. Again, to reiterate, these tips and tricks are mainly for intermediate players who already know the basics of the game. Today I want to talk about the Reconquest CB, and I want to basically recommend to you to use the Reconquest CB. I guess the general idea of the Reconquest CB is clear. It's basically attack has a certain core on a province, and this gives a certain casus belli, the Reconquest casus belli, and the effect of the Reconquest casus belli is compared to the normal conquest casus belli that you will only get 25% of the aggressive expansion you would get if it was a normal conquest CB, so 1/4, and the cost for taking the province is 75% compared to the normal conquest CB. So these are basically the main advantages: less AE, less war score cost, significantly less AE, and that's basically also the reason why you should use it. Usually at the beginning, when you are a beginner of EU4, then you will rather you won't be very fast with your wars. You won't conquer so much land that aggressive expansion really becomes a big issue for you. But the better you get, the more land you can conquer, and you will at some point get problems with other countries getting so high AE that they join coalitions and attack you, or are in some way a lot more difficult to conquer, and so on. So you want to avoid coalitions, you want to avoid gaining a lot of AE, and that's why you should use the Reconquest CB. And this introduction already gives a hint towards why, or in which region of the world this is the most recommendable. Well, that's of course mainly in regions where you gain a lot of AE. So, for example, Europe or other more densely populated areas, maybe India and so on, where it's more important to avoid high AE because many countries, many techs could join a coalition against you potentially. And I mean, to get into it a bit more in detail, how you could do it, and where, and showing you some examples of it. I have loaded up a campaign I'm playing right now with France, where I have focused on using vessels and reconquesting for these vessels with their claims. So basically, at the beginning with France, we have some cores on English territory, but then that's it. Then you can obviously not declare Reconquest wars again, but if you vassalize a country that has Reconquest claims, you can use them for your own expansions. And typical example, of course, is Byzantium. Basically every EU4 player knows the strategy to release Byzantium or to vassalize Byzantium and then reconquest their cores from the Ottomans. Typical strategy because you always want to keep the Ottomans small, so this is very well known. But it's, in my opinion, not nearly the only situation where you should use it, but actually you can use it in a lot of situations, a lot of times, to reduce your AE. And this whole strategy, of course, has the same has the advantages you get from using vessels in general, because with these strategies you will always have a number of vessels. Some you're integrating, some you're just releasing, and so on. But you will play with vessels a lot, and this has some inherent advantages which are not really close, or which I don't really want to fully explain now in this video why it's good to use vessels. I mainly wanted to focus on the CB and ways to use it, and but just to mention a few big factors. Of course, you can use basically diplomatic points instead of administrative points to expand, because when you expand with vessels, you pay points when you integrate them, but not diplo points when you integrate them, but not administrative points, because you don't actually core the land in the first place. And one other big advantage is, of course, or maybe a smaller but also significant advantage, is that you don't use much governing capacity. For example, in this situation, I'm already owning a vast amount of land in Europe, and if I would own this all directly at this point, I would of course be stronger, but I would also never be able to manage my governing capacity. And that's just a few points regarding this, the use of vessels. But now back to the CB. So basically what I do is I'm always, no matter what part of the game, or at least until around the age of absolutism, I will always check for possible countries I could either release and then do the reconquest. So take one province, release the tag, and then reconquest, or I look for diplo-vassalizing tags which have reconquest claims on other tags, and sometimes you can also, of course, vassalize them through war and then reconquest. So there are multiple ways, and you always have to kind of check where the opportunities arise. It's not always the same. Of course, Byzantium is a standard, but there are different ones which come up differently in each game, and so you kind of have to check the map, and you basically have to check the map for tags with a lot of cores which don't exist anymore or are really small. So here in this case it's 1575, and you can see in the diplomatic mode my vessels and PU subjects. Mainly these are PUs here. This is all from the mission tree basically. Well, Naples is a vessel, but the Iberian tags are PUs, the rest are vessels. And for all of them, they were basically non-existent before I released them, and then I reconquered. And besides some, of course, like Bulgaria doesn't exist at the beginning, so there are always the Bulgarian cores. There are also tags which often get conquered or get integrated. And one good example in this campaign is Lithuania. You can see it's not Poland here, it's a Commonwealth. And they basically have all the provinces around Lithuania. But what I did is, when Commonwealth formed, I attacked. I released one province up here, released Lithuania, and then at Reconquest claims on the whole of Lithuania. And then it took me, even with the cheaper war score cost, 3 wars, reconquest wars. I also always took some money to reconquer the whole of Lithuania. And in the last war, I also had Bulgaria and took a few provinces of Bulgaria for Bulgaria. And you can already see here there's a single province. You might wonder, why is this a French province? Well, this is the next vessel basically to release. Here it's Novgorod, also typical that they don't exist very long in the game. They get conquered by Muscovy or Commonwealth or Sweden, or basically all their neighbors attack, because they usually don't get any good allies, and so they are tech you can often release. And if you hover over their flag here with cores and claims, you can also see on the map it's highlighted where they have claims as well. So Novgorod basically has claims here, all their starting provinces and a few more, I think. So it's quite a good reconquest. The strategy will be to attack Commonwealth first, take this part, and then attack Muscovy and take this part, and basically get hardly any AE, and it will be in one war whole amount of land. This is here one example, and another example in this campaign is Kwarako Yunlu here. Oh, I don't know how to pronounce it correctly, but this tech here, I adjusted the reconquest for this. They still have a few more. I will attack Shirva next. They had just one province left, and I could diplo-vassalize them actually, and then attack Ajam for a whole chunk of land, and yeah. And even a country like the Timurids, I have hardly any aggressive expansion here. It's minus 25, although I just basically conquered a whole lot of development of, I think, their religion and at least, yeah, Ajam, from Ajam, who's their religion close by and so on. Usually they would have 100 AE instead of 25 now, so they would be able to join a coalition against me, and now they are not. So this is a decisive difference, and even if I conquer Shirvan, the AE will decay a bit more, and they will still not be able to join a coalition because this is not quite as much land, and it's very hard to get any coalition if you use Reconquest CB mainly. It's usually just the Conquest CB or like vast expansions with the Conquest CB which really gets you the coalitions, or enough AE of your neighbors that they can join a coalition. Syria, also a typical example. Possible to release them early, and because they don't exist at the beginning, and they have quite a few claims here. Not all the land they have now. I've fed them afterwards as well, a few extra provinces, which is of course possible as well. Yeah, just to highlight a few examples. And another one which I think is quite good for this campaign, and also is not very rarely that this is possible. I could diplo-vassalize Denmark because they had lost a war against Sweden and Lübeck and lost nearly all of their corps. This is also, I basically just finished this war, and they also still have a number of extra corps. Basically, these up here I can still reconquer for little AE, and I mean here we could also check, for example, for Brandenburg. They now have aggressive expansion of 17. That is pretty sure, or I'm pretty sure that this is mainly because of this Sweden war, which ended just a few months ago, and yeah, they can't join the coalition against me because they don't have 50 AE. And yeah, or some other aspects to make this strategy worthwhile is of course to set you up for effective integration of vessels, so to reduce a deploy annexation cost. And I mean the main way to reduce deploy annexation costs is of course influence ideas with the 25% cost reduction, and if you combine that with administrative ideas, my first two idea groups with France, usually you get another policy which gives you an extra minus 20%, so we are already at minus 45% deploy annexation cost with that, and so my integrations are fairly cheap and fast, and yeah, and additionally I'm also taking diplomatic ideas, so I will have a lot of diplomatic reputation, and that also increases the speed of your diplomatic annexations. One more thing I should mention is maybe that the Reconquest CB becomes less interesting for you when the age of absolutism begins, because as soon as or when you are able to raise your maximum or your absolutism, because your absolutism increases your administrative efficiency. Your administrative efficiency also reduces your AE from taking provinces. So the provinces you take aren't just cheaper to take in core, they also result in less AE, so your whole AE management isn't that important anymore. You should actually be able to conquer and core a lot without much or too much problem. And so it becomes less interesting, and so it's mainly the time until maybe 1620, but yeah, this is, I guess, what most players mainly play, and so I think it's really relevant for everyone to. Or it's not necessary to use this strategy. Of course, there are different strategies, but it's definitely worth a try going more for vessels. Another aspect, I mean, here you can see I've got a lot of diplomatic relations, a lot of vessels, basically only vessels. I think these are 12 subjects, not vessels, subjects. And I have 11 relations, and no, even 12 relations and 13 subjects. So you can really boost, or one part to make the strategy even better is to really boost the number of diplomatic relations you can have. And yeah, I guess the most important aspect of this here is French strong duchies, which is a special edict for the French, but also every other tech has strong duchies as an state edict and as a privilege, and they just then have only 2 diplomatic relations. And yeah, as I said, with ideas influence, diplomatic ideas, maybe a policy which gives an extra diplomatic relation. This all contributes to using the strategy, taking vessels, using Reconquest CB, integrating the vessels, really worthwhile. At the moment, I'm not integrating, mainly because I'm filling out diplomatic ideas. Usually, would always have like 1 or 2 of the vessels being integrated to keep the flow going, basically, so I can release Novgorod soon. And yeah. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you. Bye.